Welcome into Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. My name is Joel Goldberg. Happy Wednesday. Love these holiday weeks. I've never been a Monday through Friday guy before with my whole baseball schedule, or for 25 years in TV. There was no such thing as a normal Monday through Friday or normal business hours. So as someone that's working somewhat more normal business hours for the moment, I really have an appreciation for that holiday weekend that in the past I was always working. I was usually doing a baseball game on Memorial Day. Don't get me wrong, I would much rather be doing a baseball game. We'd all like that right now. But this has been so much fun. I've mentioned it before. I fully expect this podcast, Rounding the Bases Live, to continue even once baseball season, if baseball season starts. And I'm optimistic. I think that it will. But the world keeps going one way or another, and telling these stories has been a lot of fun. This today is episode number 46. Along for almost all of the ride has been Enterprise Bank and Trust, hashtag no stopping you. Just delivered a little recorded speech for the folks over at Enterprise the other day. They have been working so hard and put in so many hours with all the PPP loans. And so great respect and appreciation for them. Again, Enterprise Bank and Trust, hashtag no stopping you. And I did mention on yesterday's show that I saw some ground beef sitting in the kitchen from Casey Cattle Company. It was thawing out, and I didn't know what we were having. It was tacos. Oh, it was Tuesday last night. I was wondering for a while why Taco Monday, like you have to have that alliteration, Taco Tuesday. It was Tuesday because of the Memorial Day holiday. Check them out. I can't say enough good things about this veteran-owned and operated company led by Patrick Montgomery, former U.S. Army Ranger. Wagyu beef right up in western Missouri. They deliver to all 50 states, so check them out. That's their website and their social media. It is worth it. You just got to catch them when they're not sold out, because they are in high demand. They'll bring it down to Kansas City and deliver to all 50 states. So now that we have that business, and good business in my opinion, out of the way, one of the real fun things for me about this show is really just having different topics every single day, and in all types of different fields. Tomorrow, by the way, will be a discussion about millennials, Gen Z, how we all come together. I've got a big panel for that. A totally different discussion today as I bring in the owner of, I've lost my skills of directing this TV show. I'm still learning. But anyway, Darren Dupriest is my guest. He's the owner of Validity Screening Solutions. This is a discussion that I think I've wanted to have for a while, and it's been on the books for a few weeks or so, because it very much relates to most of us that are in the workforce, trying to get back into the workforce. Darren, first off, how are you doing during these crazy times?
I'm well, my family's well, my employees are well, so I'm doing okay.
Yep, that's the most important thing,
Right.
Health and safety, and taking care of our loved ones. But, you do take care of a lot of people, and you're involved in a lot. For people that don't know Validity Screening Solutions, if you're thinking screening and you're thinking like T-shirt printing or something like that, or graphic design, that's
Right.
not what this is. Tell us about Validity Screening Solutions.
Yeah, we have a pretty focused objective here. We are in the background check and drug testing business. So we work for really three different enterprises, if you will. Hiring professionals are really our biggest bucket. Those HR people out there that are looking to fill those positions for companies all over the country. We also do volunteer screening for organizations that are bringing in volunteers, primarily to work with youth, but not always, sometimes elderly as well. And then our third segment is academic screening. That's primarily in the healthcare field, but individuals that are applying to nursing school, med school, dental school, pharmacy, so on and so forth. So we do that as well. But we're very fortunate. We're a local company, kind of born and bred here is what I like to say. But we have the good fortune of working for companies and organizations all over the country.
Right, and in business since 2006.
Yeah.
Before I go any further, too, I'm always always will be fascinated by the field of police work, certainly FBI and that whole world. I think part of that for me, I've never lived in that world.
Yeah.
My what I would call dabbling in that world is having a lot of friends, because when you're at these sporting events every day, who do you see every single day? You see the police officers, you see
Right.
the firefighters. That usually ends up being, hey, you want to come along with us? Come hang out. By the way, I will say this is very off topic. That if you are a cop or a firefighter and you want a quiet night, just invite me to come along because nothing ever happens when I'm there. It only happens the second that I go home. But you have a background in the FBI. Tell me about that background and then how that's translated into what you do today.
Yeah, the FBI was really my dream job and career forever, being a kid. My father was an agent, and when I was a kid, I grew up in a little town. Well, actually, it was little then, not so much anymore, South Bend, Indiana, where Notre Dame is. But this is better than Notre Dame. So
you're going to work it in there.
I had to
the
work
University of Miami.
So
I told you could if you wanted to. You said I won't do it. I said, yeah, do it. Go ahead. It's fine.
All my alum will be proud of that. Yeah. So grew up in this little neighborhood, and all the FBI agents lived in the neighborhood. There were South Bend Police Department officers. There were Indiana State Police officers there. When I was a kid, I thought everybody grew up to be a cop of some kind. I just didn't know any different. Every time, there'd be a barbecue, nothing but law enforcement. My baseball games, nothing but law enforcement. It was kind of cool. So I just figured I needed to choose which agency I was going to work for, not what I was going to do for a living, if you will. And that really stuck with me. I loved everything about the FBI. I mean, it is the preeminent law enforcement agency in the world. When I was a kid, my dad used to take me to the office on weekends, and I would sort wanted posters and go through files, just reading them, just because it's fascinating stuff. Some kids were reading, the Hardy Boys books. I was reading a file on Whitey Bulger. So it was maybe a little bit weird, but it was really enticing to me. So to make a long, crazy story short, I kind of grew to love business, and I wanted to figure out how to marry the two up. So I studied finance in college, and I wanted to get on the white collar side of law enforcement. I understood the business part. I knew, there are plenty of bad guys out there that wear suits and ties as well. It's just not all the stereotypical bad guy, if you will. So that's what I wanted to do. I was really fortunate right out of the University of Miami, got an opportunity to join the FBI, actually right here in the Kansas City division, which was at that time in the old federal building, the old post office downtown. Mm-hmm. And I loved every minute of it. It was fantastic. I came in, couldn't have been greener, even though I thought I knew everything. I mean, I'm a typical college grad. I know everything. Right. And they were quick to put me in my place, which was good. Everybody needs that humbling experience, especially in that first real job. But I loved it. I was just kind of a sponge. I soaked up everything. I was really fortunate to be assigned to 3 different squads. I worked on one for a little while that really doesn't exist anymore. It was called Foreign Counterintelligence. Now that has been absorbed into Homeland Security. But one of the things that they did was background checks on all kinds of different people. So I kind of learned it there. I had a pretty unfortunately short tenure with the FBI, long political story behind it. And I've never been known to be very patient. And right now, a lot of people that work with me are rolling their eyes saying, yeah, that's the understatement of the day. So I left because I had an opportunity to go to a private company here in town and kind of do the same thing. And background checks just sort of evolved originally through insurance companies that were losing significant claims. Back in the day, computers, were $2,000-$3,000, and to have a semi truck full of computers stolen, it was a multi-million-dollar loss. So insurance companies would bring us in to look for their computers, basically, because law enforcement, it's not their job. If they find it, great, they'll return it, but they're not going to go seek these losses for insurance companies. So we would start our investigation. The first thing we do is give me the list of employees, and they'd hand over a list of 25 employees, and 22 of them would be convicted felons. And every single one of those individuals had a key to the warehouse, so it was a pretty easy job. That just kind of evolved into what we were doing. And the background industry kind of came together in the late 90s. Before then, it was really didn't exist that much. If you're applying for a job, you didn't have a background check per se, unless it was a federal job or with law enforcement, something along that line. So it was just kind of a natural progression for me. I really enjoyed it for 2 reasons. Number one, I took a lot of satisfaction in making sure that the right organizations were getting the right people. I'd give a good example. My kids were born at Shawnee Mission Med. I wanted to make sure that the right people were working at Shawnee Mission Med. When my kids were growing up, I wanted to make sure that they had the right baseball coaches, the right soccer coaches. So I took a lot of pride and probably a little bit of comfort in doing that. But it also gave me just an opportunity to work with people. And that's always been the most interesting thing to me, is interacting with people, which is one of the things that this past couple months has really driven me nuts about is because, thank goodness for this, because if not, I think I'd be going stark raving mad. But so through those two things, it just kind of kept progressing, and we've been very fortunate here in town, and we've grown quite significantly, and have a great team now. But that's kind of the road from that kid whose first bicycle was stolen property evidence, and to today. That's kind of everything in between. But it's been a fun ride.
Well, and now here you are, all these years later, and along the journey, and been at it obviously a long time with Validity Screening Solutions. And so, you talk about, by the way, this thought popped into my head as you were talking about, your kids' coaches or being born. And I was thinking, once in high school, many, many, many years ago, I went on a date with a girl whose dad was like the police sergeant in town. We're up in Chicago. And,
Good luck.
Yeah, that was, I don't know that I made it beyond one date, but that was nerve-wracking, and I could only imagine, what it would be like to show up at the Dupriest house, to be going anywhere with one of the Dupriest kids, knowing what Dad has access to. Anyway, I think we would all like to have that kind of information. That's what you provide. That's the service that you're able to provide for so many. And so I want to connect some dots here with this pandemic because, well, a couple thoughts. One, criminals still are committing crimes. Right. The bad doesn't go away.
Right.
But people have gone away from the office. So if you are involved in a background check or you need to do a drug test or whatever it is, what have the challenges been during this time where not everybody is up and functioning in the same way?
Yeah, it's been really difficult, and probably no more difficult than everybody else's business because we all have our little niches, of course. But some of the things that have been problematic for us is, well, number one, hiring all but ceased on March 26th. We just when the initial panic kind of hit and everybody retreated home, nobody was hiring anymore. There were no volunteers being worked through. I mean. Cities across the country are canceling their summer sports programs, their summer camps, all those things. Good grief, my kids go to 3 camps in the summer. They were all canceled by, early April. So that was the first biggest challenge is now what do we do? Thank goodness. Colleges and universities are still, up and running for the most part. They were already screening their summer and fall classes coming in. So that really kept the pump primed for us. But a couple things that were really problematic that most people wouldn't think is, first of all, there's no magic button that we just press on a computer that gives me Joel Goldberg's potential criminal record history. That doesn't exist. We have to go to courthouses all over the country to find that information. Well, they started closing. And when they're closed, we can't get access to it, so we can't tell our clients what we need to be able to tell them. The best example I can give is Cook County, Illinois, which is where Chicago is.
Yep.
We do thousands of criminal histories through that particular courthouse every single week. It closed for 7 weeks, I believe. And then even when it came back online, well, the employees couldn't come back rushing in because they had to remain safe, and some of them may have been sick. So there was just a problem getting to the data that we needed in really the biggest resource that we had. That's been alleviated in the last couple of weeks. Some jurisdictions around the country are a little bit more technologically advanced, so we're able to access them remotely. But others, like Cook, you've got to walk in for the most part. So that's been a significant challenge. Of course, with everybody else out there, we had to figure out how our employees are going to be able to do this remotely. We have an office here that almost 50 people work out of every single day. And since March 27th, I've been the only one here, which has been nice a little bit, I will be honest. But it's at the same time, I've got to figure out how do our 75 employees around the country keep doing what they're doing because we've never functioned remotely like that. Fortunately, our clients are doing the same thing, so there's a great deal of understanding. If we had done this maybe voluntarily on our own, that probably wouldn't have been the case, but we're all in the same boat, so it's helped a lot.
So if and we'll have a discussion about this in a moment about the trends and the way the hirings and companies are starting to reemerge and come out of this. And that to me is a really, really interesting discussion to have. But you already mentioned it, Darren. You are not a guy that is going to be known for being patient. Yet everything has slowed down. And so for those of your clients that wanted information, how have you been able to handle knowing that you can't get it in the same way or can't get it in the same time frame that you were before?
Yeah, it's been a lot of one-on-one conversations. I mean, we keep our clients up to date electronically, of course. We send them news blasts, and we have been throughout this. I've even recorded several videos that we send out to all our clients, just trying to educate them as to what can happen and what can't happen. But it's been a lot of phone calls, because some people just don't understand. Well, I'm okay here in Santa Barbara, California. Why aren't things okay in Fairfax, Virginia? So it's just different. So a lot of one-on-one, but that's really the relationship building that we've done up to this point is really paying off now. So instead of, I'm a big believer in treating your clients as people first, paying clients second, if you will. So, my client relations director is very, very good about what she does and training our people to build those relationships and get to know who that client is, get to know what their particular needs are. So we're not just a website interface, if you will. And so it makes those conversations, which could be difficult, a lot easier. When you can call somebody that you've already broken the ice with and have kind of a one-on-one conversation with, as opposed to just a mass media blast, it helps the medicine go down a little bit easier, if you will.
Yeah. So instead of the response being, well, what's taking them so long? And I hope and think that there's been a different level of empathy during this pandemic. Yeah. Not for everybody. We all could be better at it, and sure, some are better at it than others. But, one of the things that I say in one of my virtual speeches now is that there's never been a better time to walk in someone else's shoes, because we're all walking in that in some form or another. Or as a friend of mine who was on the podcast last week, Andre Davis, who's in business development for Built Interiors, said, that the storm is raining over everyone's house. There are moments where it feels like it's only raining over your house, but it's raining over everyone. So we're all in this, but everybody's got different priorities. I still think it always comes back. I say this over and over again. It always comes back to people and relationships, which is true in any field. And I'm sure that you ought to go back to this. You learned that during your FBI days. It's not as easy as just catching the bad guys. You need help and relationships along the way.
It is. In anything you do, in any segment of business or whatever kind of career you have, it is that relationship. And, in the FBI, you needed to rely on people from the community. You needed to rely on other investigators and other agencies. And sometimes you needed to rely on the relationship, if you will, with the bad guy, him or herself. So it's all about that. It's how can you as a business leader or somebody in business extrapolate that business relationship into something that's going to be productive for both parties. That's really the key. When people start thinking a little bit less individually and more about how we can solve each other's problems, everybody wins. And that's really kind of been a cornerstone of what we do, because we're really in all honesty, we're in the helping you out business, if you will. If there's a not-for-profit working with little kids, we're helping you out by making sure you get the right candidates, and just to keep everybody safe. So it's something that we teach our people early on, and the best part about it is they get it. We'll explain to them what we do and how we do it, and you'll just see the light bulb going over their head, and they say, okay, I get it, because they can all relate. They've all been in a volunteer situation. They've all had kids as volunteers. They've all walked into a healthcare clinic. They've had a service technician into their homes. So when they start relating all these different things, they understand what our true mission really is. And it helps everybody, us and the client that we're working for.
And everybody, whether they realize it or not, everybody needs your help in some form or another. I mean, I was thinking as you were talking about that, I volunteered to do some work as a mentor for a school in the city a couple of years ago. None of that happened until that background check, and I had to go to a class, and all of that happened. And I wasn't worried about that, nothing to hide, but just a curiosity question, then we'll get to the workforce right now. We don't need to get into all the details, although you can, but what are the most common, what are the most common things you find that people don't want you to find, or what are you able to, keep it clean or whatever, but what are you able to, or what are the red flags?
Well, it depends. Because a red flag for somebody working in lawn care is obviously different than your pharmacist. So it's all relative to the risk involved with the position. But, I can tell you that repeatedly, and my verification team can tell you that fudging on education is way up toward the top of the list. We see all the time, very few people anymore outright lie about having a degree, although more would than you would think. But what we see a lot of times is on the resume, the degree that says accounting was really a degree in general business or liberal arts or something unrelated, but somebody kind of dust up that resume a little bit to fit the requirements for the position of which they're applying. So that's really high up the list. Driving records are really bad. Individuals that are going to be out there driving on business time. I'm not just talking about truck drivers. I'm talking about somebody that just might be running errands or a salesperson making sales calls all over town. If they've got a suspended or revoked license for a couple DUIs, that's a bad thing for all of us. I mean, just the general public, not to mention the client who's got a lot of risk associated with that. Criminal records are pretty self-explanatory. There are certain criminal records that are okay for certain jobs. A receptionist for a company with a DUI conviction may be fine. That same individual, probably not who you want to be your office courier. And then others that probably fit a little bit more logically in there. But what we're really doing is when we're working with a particular client, it's who are they? What do they do? Who do they work for? Who do they have access to? And what is the risk level associated? And we help those clients really tailor what they're looking for based upon all those criteria.
No, that makes sense. And I am amazed at the amount of high profile people that fudge on those resumes in terms of education. Like, first off, I would think that a layman like me could go and find that information if I really wanted to. I'm not diminishing what you do. I'm guessing that's one of the easier things that you were able to do in terms of school records. I'm constantly amazed at when that happens to an executive, or certainly we see it on both sides of the aisle in politics all the time. And it's like, what?
Right.
Did you not think at some point you were going to get vetted? I mean, that just, and then I would think one of the things that makes life very easy for research nowadays too is social media. I mean, the track record that people have on that, it's all there.
Social media is a whole different beast. And it is, as a matter of fact, I give some talks to high schools, primarily all over the metro. And I try to scare into those graduating seniors, be careful what you post out there, because there are people like me, they're going to find it and they're going to tell it to somebody, or just you. I mean, if you were looking to hire somebody onto your company there, it's too easy anymore. And kids, they just don't think about the future and the ramifications of maybe losing that perfect job because of something stupid that they posted X number of years ago. But you're right, it's out there. Social media is kind of the Wild West as far as background checks go. There are a lot of legal issues and what can and can't be done. But for the most part, employers don't care what some of those legal restrictions are. They're going to do it. They're going to check it out and they're going to see what's there.
Well, kids are kids, so the challenge is, trying to get them to grow up a little bit, and that'll go on. By the way, whatever's in the world till the end of time. So
right, that's not going to change.
We weren't perfect either. Well, So let's talk
social media didn't exist when we were that age. So thank goodness.
We in many ways we had it much easier for sure. Simpler times, and I'm sure that. I know that our parents said the same thing about us when we were growing up. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about the workforce and what you have seen in terms of the companies that you're working for. You see these hiring trends as well as anyone. Take me from, say, that third week of March, end of March, up until now, and what you've seen in terms of progress.
Yeah. I've always looked at validity as being a microcosm of how the overall economy is doing. When we see upticks in hiring, of course, that's good for everybody. When we see dips in certain segments, what might the problem be? Now, on about March 26, 27, somebody just turned the spigot off. It just stopped for about a week and a half. And then universities kind of started getting back to normal for their future programs. I think they were assuming, and probably wisely so, well, if this program isn't starting until July, let's go ahead and keep to our regular schedules. But employment and volunteers just went away. What's been interesting is the last 2 weeks, we're seeing an uptick in different industries across the board. Interesting enough, the transportation, like over-the-road truckers, is probably trailing a little bit. And I think that has a lot to do with the products from point A to point B that normally be moving all the time are moving very slowly because products, point A hasn't produced them yet. So I think that'll catch up. But we're seeing a really positive uptick in really all of our segments of business right now, which is good. Technology has been fantastic. Manufacturing is starting to come back along. Healthcare has really kicked back in because when they were inundated with the pandemic and they're 24 hours a day dealing with patients, they didn't have time to add to the ranks. They were literally grabbing volunteers from all over the country when they can. So now they're kind of getting back to the normal hiring, which is really, really good. But it's been slow. But I think, and I'm really being optimistic that June, let's turn the page on another month, get to a fresh month. It's going to feel summer-like. I think we're going to see some of that new hiring, continue.
And then we'll see. Depends on who you talk to, who you listen to, and I'm not convinced that everybody really knows anyway what the fall looks like. I mean, some think it comes back, some aren't sure, or do we have our guard up more? Do we have our guard down, down more, or guard up less? I mean, it's who knows where this is going, other than the fact that none of us, and I know you included, ever expected, or maybe you did, I don't know. We never expected to go through something like this. I mean, because we never have before.
Not in my wildest dreams. And anybody, you could line 100 different business owners up, and 100 of them are going to say, never did I anticipate something like this happening. What we've done is we've kind of specced out a number of different models, what-if models. I mean, we know some things. We know that spring hiring is done and it was a bust. We know that summer activities, primarily for kids, are done. They're just not going to happen for the most part. So we've moved forward into the fall. Our K through 12 school is going to open back up on time. We do background checks for probably about 50, 60 school districts across the country, but most of the metro area here. Do they start back up their hiring again August 1st, or do they not? So that's one thing that could affect us. So we don't know. But what we're trying to do is, with as much intel and data as we have, plan on what might happen so we can properly, assign our personnel. We can properly source the data that we have, just do the best we can with what we have.
And maybe a different understanding or perspective if things shut down again of how to do what you need to do. I mean, again, getting back to what I said before, that you're a little bit at the mercy of what's open and what's not and your resources. But I would imagine that if and when, hopefully it doesn't, if and when this comes back around, you'll have a different perspective on it.
Well, we now have a playbook, and we didn't before. Everybody had a blank piece of paper that they stared at for several weeks. And we, like I'm sure hundreds of other companies out there, wrote that playbook during this time, because believe me, when there were crickets chirping in the background for where our orders normally come in, we had people lined up doing different things that we'd never done before. Right. And one of those was we had a small committee put together to write that playbook. What do we do if this ever happens again? So we'll be smarter about it. We're not going to be perfect, not even close, because, God forbid something, zigs when it should have zagged and we have a different issue. But we'll be better prepared for whatever might come down the pike.
And bottom line, in your world, people will never stop. This is going to sound like a pessimistic thing or a negative thing. It's not, but there will be a section of any population that does bad things. I want to I don't know if it's a reiteration, but I want to make it clear that I think most people are good. I really
Sure.
do. However, the bad guys, so to speak, whether you're in the FBI, whether you're owning a company like yours, the bad guys aren't going away.
No, they're not. And, Joel, I've said ever since I've been in this business, I will gladly close this shop down and get a new career if everybody goes straight and is good all the time. But it's just not going to happen. So there's some job security in that a little bit, if you will. We're what I call validity, and what I've always called us, we're a necessary evil. We've got to be there. We've got to educate. We've got to provide information to certain entities to make sure they're okay. We're not in the prevent somebody from getting a job business. We're in the make sure the right person gets the right job. There's a job for everybody out there. I don't care what you've done in the past, but some jobs aren't the right jobs. And that's what we're here to do.
Makes sense. And so if anyone wants more information, they can go to Validity Screening Solutions website, validityscreening.com. Most importantly, I am glad that business will be picking up, because if business is picking up for you, it means more companies are hiring, we're reemerging, we're getting back to life as we once knew it, even if it'll never be exactly that way.
Right.
And I know that that's got to be a real positive, not just for you personally in your company, but for all of Kansas City and certainly the country too.
It is. It's good news for everybody. And we're thrilled that we get to see it on the front end. So it's good.
Well, Darren, this was a lot of fun, very insightful, which is what my expectation was, because I knew that you had that peek behind the curtain, so to speak, of what's going on in the world and within our community, and doing so in a way that many of us hear about, but we don't really know about. So continued success and making an impact, which you guys do in the schools, in the communities, in the offices, because look, we all want to be around the good people, the ones that make the most sense, and I know that you guys are a big part of that. So I appreciate all of your insight. Glad that you were able to get your shout out to the you in there. You know, it's these things are important. I got to mention the University of Wisconsin whenever we get a chance to do that too. It's
there you go.
So,
well, Joel,
hey,
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for the time.
Yep. Likewise. Thanks for doing it. Stay safe, and looking forward to seeing you soon.
Sounds good. Be well now.
All right. That is Darren Dupriest, the CEO and the founder of Validity Screening Solutions. Really interesting episode. Thanks for following. We've got a great panel discussion tomorrow. It's going to make me look really, really old, because this is all like older millennials, younger Gen Z, and we're going to talk about how to bring those generations together. I'm really interested because I think it's important to be able to work with those different generations. I see it every day, certainly in baseball. Once again, big thanks to Casey Cattle Company. Check out their social media or their website. Wagyu beef, veteran-owned and operated steaks, burgers, award-winning hot dogs, bacon cheeseburger brats. You hungry yet? I am. I'm going to go eat something right now. So big thanks to them for their service to this country and for helping feed our community and the country. And also through a Validity Screening. We'll give Validity Screening another shot here. I told you I'm still learning how to direct my own show. I can't wait to get back with my guys in the truck, by the way, that are the experts at this. But thanks to Darren Dupriest from Validity Screening Solutions. Really interesting information there. And a thanks to Enterprise Bank and Trust, #NoStoppingYou. They help make this podcast happen. Back tomorrow for episode number 47. I'm Joel Goldberg. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and please share this to your network.